The great crystal halls of Prime sparkled under three suns. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered for the most important meeting in 200 years. The Galactic Council's bicentennial assembly brought together dozens of species from every corner of known space. Speaker stood at the center of the massive amphitheater. His crystal body caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. The tall leader raised one hand for silence. Thousands of beings from different worlds stopped their conversations and turned toward him. "Welcome, friends from across the stars," said. His voice echoed through translation devices that turned his crystal song into words each species could understand. "We gather today to celebrate 200 years of peace and cooperation." The crowd rustled with approval, clicked their mandibles together in their version of applause. The aquatic bubbled inside their water suits. Small, furry squeaked happily from their elevated platforms. "But first," continued, "we honor those who came before us, those who are no longer with us to see this great achievement." The speaker pressed a control, and a holographic list appeared above the assembly. Names of extinct species scrolled slowly through the air. Each name represented an entire civilization that had vanished from the galaxy. At the top of the list in ancient script were the words, "Homo extinct 847 standard years." A moment of silence filled the hall. Even the youngest delegates knew the story of the humans. They had been a primitive species from a small blue world called Earth. According to the records, they had destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons before they could join the galactic community. Their entire civilization had burned in atomic fire. "The humans serve as a reminder," said softly. "Intelligence without wisdom leads to destruction. We must never forget this lesson." Commander of the military shifted in his seat. His black carapace gleamed as he leaned forward. The warrior had little patience for memorials about weak species. His people controlled nearly half the galaxy through strength and conquest. In his opinion, the humans had simply proven they were not fit to survive. "The memorial is complete," announced. "Now we turn to current matters." The first item was trade disputes between the mining colonies and the agricultural worlds. Boring but necessary business. Then came territorial boundaries and shipping routes. The delegates settled in for hours of tedious negotiations. Nobody paid attention to the young technician who slipped into the hall. Was just another worker, small and forgettable. She carried a data pad and wore the simple uniform of the communications department. She had news, but it could wait until the break. The session dragged on. Representatives argued about cargo taxes and fuel costs. Some delegates dozed in their seats. Others whispered among themselves about dinner plans. Finally, the afternoon break was called. Delegates stood and stretched. Conversations broke out as beings socialized across species lines. This was when real business often happened, in quiet corners away from official records. Approached the technical booth, where Chief Monitor Paul was reviewing system reports. The elderly barely looked up from his screens. "What is it, young one?" Paul asked. "Sir, we've been getting strange readings from the deep space monitors," said. "Energy patterns that don't match anything in our databases." Paul finally looked at her. "What kind of patterns?" Showed him her data pad. "They started 3 days ago. The signals are coming from the galaxy's edge, near the void boundary. The patterns repeat every few hours, but we can't identify the source." The old monitor studied the data. The readings showed massive energy discharges, but they didn't match any known technology. They weren't weapons or mining equipment. They weren't natural phenomena like stellar explosions or black hole activity. "Probably cosmic background radiation," Paul said, handing back the pad. "The universe is full of mysteries. File a report and we'll investigate when we have time." Nodded but looked disappointed. She had hoped for more interest in her discovery. The young returned to her station, where banks of monitors showed peaceful star systems across the galaxy. What she didn't know was that the strange signals were getting stronger. In the main hall, the session resumed. Speaker called for reports from each sector. The outer rim worlds reported good harvests. The industrial core was meeting production quotas. The military zones were quiet. Everything seemed perfect in the galaxy. The Galactic Council had achieved its goal of lasting peace through careful diplomacy and economic cooperation. Wars were rare now. Most disputes were settled through negotiation rather than violence. The hegemony still controlled their territory through force, but they stayed within agreed boundaries. Commander represented their interests at the council but rarely spoke. His people preferred action to words. As the day ended, delegates began planning social events. There would be cultural exchanges, trade meetings, and diplomatic dinners. The assembly would continue for another week with various sessions and celebrations. Nobody mentioned the old human worlds. Those dead systems had been stripped of their resources long ago. Some had been resettled by other species. Earth itself had become a dumping ground for industrial waste. The toxic world was barely habitable now. In the ancient archives, a few scholars still studied human records. They found them fascinating in a sad way. Humans had shown promise in some areas. Their art and literature suggested complex emotions. Their technology had been advancing rapidly before the end. But ultimately, the humans had failed the basic test of civilization. They had not learned to control their violent nature. Their weapons had grown more powerful than their wisdom. The result was inevitable. Dr. A historian often wondered what might have been different. If the humans had reached the stars before destroying themselves, what kind of galactic citizens would they have become? Would they have been warriors like the, traders like the, artists like the? The question would never be answered. The humans were gone, and the galaxy had moved on without them. As the three sons of Prime set beyond the crystal spires, the first day of the assembly came to an end. Delegates retired to their quarters or continued conversations in the grand hotels. The vast halls grew quiet except for the soft humming of the maintenance workers. In the communications center worked the night shift. She watched her monitors and filed routine reports. The strange energy signals had stopped for now, but she kept watching the galaxy's edge. Deep in space, ancient monitoring stations continued their lonely watch. Automated systems recorded and every energy signature. Most were routine, stars burning, planets spinning, ships moving between worlds. But something new was stirring in the darkness beyond the galaxy's rim. Something vast and patient was finally beginning to move. The peaceful galaxy slept on, unaware that everything was about to change. The morning session of the Galactic Council was in full swing when every communication device in the system suddenly came alive. Data pads beeped, wall screens flickered. Personal communicators chimed all at once. The sound was deafening. Speaker called for order, but nobody was listening. Delegates stared at their devices in confusion. The same signal was coming through every channel at once. It was an old-fashioned radio transmission, the kind primitive civilizations used centuries ago. Then the static cleared, and a voice spoke in perfect galactic standard. "This is Admiral Sarah of the Terran Federation Navy. We're coming home." The great hall fell silent, every being froze in place. The words echoed off the crystal walls like a ghost from the past. Humans had been extinct for nearly 1,000 years. This had to be some kind of joke. Commander was the first to react. The warrior stood up, his mandibles clicking angrily. "This is impossible. The humans are dead. Someone is playing games with us." Before anyone could respond, the sky above Prime began to tear apart. Was still at her communication post from the night shift. She watched in amazement as her sensors went crazy. Massive energy readings appeared at the edge of the system. Space itself seemed to ripple and bend. "Sir," she called to Chief Monitor Paul, "something's happening." The old rushed to her station. His crystal body pulsed with alarm as he read the displays. "Get me a visual feed, now." The main screen showed empty space 1 second. The next second, it showed the impossible. Ships were appearing out of nowhere, hundreds of them. They dropped out of some kind of hyperspace that the galactic sensors couldn't even detect. The vessels were unlike anything in the databases. They were sleek and angular, made of a dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Each ship was enormous. The smallest was larger than a battle cruiser. The largest was the size of a small moon. They moved in perfect formation, silent and deadly. In the assembly hall, panic was starting to spread. The alien delegates could see the ships through the transparent dome overhead. Some began to flee toward the exits. Others drew weapons or activated defense protocols. Speaker struggled to maintain order. "Everyone remain calm. This could be a misunderstanding." The lead ship in the human fleet was a massive vessel painted in dark blue and silver. Along its hull were symbols that made the older delegates gasp. They were ancient Terran military markings, evolved far beyond anything in the historical records. A new transmission came through all channels. This time it included visual data. The face that appeared on every screen was clearly human, a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and weathered features. She wore a dark uniform with insignia that suggested high military rank. Her eyes were cold and calculating. "I am Admiral Sarah," the woman said. Her voice was calm but carried absolute authority. "I speak for the Terran Federation and all of humanity. We have returned to reclaim what is ours." Commander snarled. "Impossible, the humans destroyed themselves, we have proof." Admiral seemed to look directly at him through the transmission. "You have the proof we wanted you to have. The reports of our extinction were greatly exaggerated." The commander reached for his weapon, but Speaker stopped him with a gesture. The leader was trying to process what he was seeing. If these were really humans, everything the galaxy knew was wrong. Admiral said, activating his own communicator, "Please help us understand. Our records show that humanity was destroyed by nuclear war 847 years ago. How is this possible?" The human woman smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Your records show exactly what we wanted them to show. We needed the galaxy to believe we were gone." Doctor, the historian, was frantically searching through his data banks. He had studied human history for decades. The official records were very clear about what had happened to Earth. But now he was finding inconsistencies, small details that had never made sense. Evidence that had been accepted without question was starting to look suspicious. "The nuclear war," he whispered to himself. "There's no radioactive signature in the historical scans. The destruction was too complete, too clean." Admiral continued her transmission. "For too long, the galaxy has been managed by committee, endless debates while real threats go ignored. That ends now." "What threats?" asked. "The galaxy is at peace." "Peace?" Admiral laughed, and the sound sent chills through every listener. "You call this peace? While they expand through conquest, while ancient evils stir in the deep dark, you know nothing of the threats that face us all." The human fleet moved closer to the planet. Their ships made no sound as they glided through space. Whatever technology they used was silent and efficient. Watched her instruments in amazement. The human ships barely showed up on most sensors. They seemed to bend space around them, becoming almost invisible to detection. Only their massive size made them visible at all. "How are they doing that?" she whispered to Chief Monitor Paul. The old could only shake his head. "This technology is beyond anything we know." In the assembly hall, delegates were arguing among themselves. Some wanted to flee the system immediately. Others thought this was an elaborate hoax. A few brave souls suggested trying to establish diplomatic contact. Commander was not among the diplomatic voices. The warrior was already sending coded messages to his fleet commanders. If humans were really alive, they would need to be dealt with quickly and brutally. Admiral seemed to sense the chaos her arrival was causing. She raised one hand, and somehow the gesture commanded attention even through a video link. "We make only 3 simple statements," she said. "First, humanity never died out. We left by choice. Second, we have returned to reclaim our rightful place in this galaxy. Third, we are not asking for permission." The transmission ended, leaving the assembly in stunned silence. Speaker was the first to recover. The crystal being activated emergency protocols and began sending messages to fleets across the galaxy. Whatever was happening here, the galaxy needed to be warned. But as he worked, he noticed something strange. His communications were being intercepted and analyzed. Someone was monitoring every message he sent. The human ships had surrounded the entire system without anyone noticing. They moved like ghosts through space, appearing and disappearing at will. It was clear that they had been watching and waiting for the perfect moment to reveal themselves. Doctor was still going through his historical records. The more he studied, the more convinced he became that the human extinction had been a lie. The evidence was all there, hidden in plain sight. "They planned this," he said to his assistant. "Centuries ago they planned this exact moment, but why? What could have made them fake their own death?" The answer to that question would have to wait. Right now, the galaxy faced a new reality. Humanity was not only alive, they were more advanced than anyone had imagined. And they had an agenda that nobody understood yet. As the day progressed, reports came in from across the galaxy. Human ships were appearing at strategic points throughout known space. Ancient human worlds that had been resettled were surrounded by mysterious vessels. The message was clear. The humans were back, and they were not the primitive species from the history books. They had become something far more dangerous. The galaxy was about to learn just how dangerous that could be. Commander did not believe in talking when force could solve a problem. While the Galactic Council sent desperate messages requesting diplomatic meetings, the military leader was already mobilizing his fleet. Battle Group Destroyer was his pride. 50 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, each one capable of destroying a city from orbit. They had built their empire with these vessels, conquering system after system with overwhelming firepower. Set course for the human position, ordered from his command ship. If these ghosts think they can intimidate us, they are wrong. His tactical officer, a young warrior named, looked uncertain. Commander, shouldn't we wait for orders from the Hegemony Council? Turned his massive head toward the younger. His black eyes glinted with dangerous light. The only order we need is to show these humans their place. They claim to have returned from extinction. We'll make it permanent this time. The fleet moved out from their staging area near the gas giant. Their ships were angular and aggressive, bristling with weapons and painted in war colors. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level a planet. As they approached the human fleet, long-range sensors began picking up details about the alien vessels. The readings were confusing. The human ships seemed to phase in and out of normal space. Their energy signatures kept changing. "Sir," reported from his station, "I'm having trouble getting a lock on the human vessels. They're shifting somehow." Studied the tactical display. The human fleet was spread out across the system in a defensive formation. Their largest ships stayed near the planet while smaller vessels patrolled the outer edges. One ship caught his attention. It was much smaller than the others, roughly the size of a destroyer. It flew alone at the edge of human formation, almost like it was waiting for something. That one pointed at the lone vessel. "We'll start with a demonstration, target the isolated ship and demand its surrender." The battle group moved into attack formation, 50 ships against one. The odds were so overwhelming that almost felt sorry for the humans. Almost. His fleet surrounded the lone human vessel, which had stopped moving and seemed to be waiting. The ship was sleek and dark, with lines that suggested speed and efficiency. Its designation was painted in white letters, TFS Indomitable. Opened a communication channel. "Human vessel, this is Commander of the Hegemony. You are outnumbered and surrender immediately or be destroyed." The response came almost instantly. A human voice, calm and professional, spoke over the channel. "This is Captain Martinez of the Terran destroyer Indomitable. We decline your offer." His mandibles clicked in anger. "You face 50 warships with one small vessel. Surrender now and your death will be quick." There was a pause. Then Captain Martinez spoke again, and this time his voice carried a hint of amusement. "Commander, we're going to give you a demonstration. Please observe carefully. You might learn something." Before could respond, every sensor in his fleet went crazy. The human destroyer simply vanished. 1 second it was there, clearly visible on all screens. The next second there was nothing but empty space. No energy signature, no debris, nothing. "Where did it go?" roared at his sensor operator. "Unknown, sir, it just disappeared." The ship spread out, searching for any trace of the human vessel. Their most advanced sensors found nothing. It was as if the ship had never existed. Then it reappeared directly in the center of the formation. Alarms blared throughout the fleet as the Indomitable materialized between 2 battlecruisers. The human ship was moving impossibly fast, weaving between the alien vessels like they were standing still. Ordered his ships to open fire, but targeting the human destroyer was like trying to catch smoke. It phased in and out of normal space, appearing long enough to strike and then vanishing again. The Indomitable's weapons were unlike anything they had ever seen. Beams of pure energy that cut through their shields like paper. Projectiles that seemed to bend space around them, hitting targets from impossible angles. One by one, the ships found their weapons systems disabled, not destroyed but somehow turned off. Their shields flickered and died. Their engines stopped responding to commands. The human destroyer moved through the fleet like a predator among sheep. It was fast, precise, and utterly devastating. Within minutes, half the ships were drifting helplessly in space. "How is this possible?" whispered from his station. Had no answer. His proudest fleet was being systematically dismantled by a single enemy vessel. Every tactical advantage the possessed meant nothing against this technology. The Indomitable stopped directly in front of his command ship. The human vessel was so close that it filled the main. Its hull showed no damage despite the intense battle it had just fought. Captain Martinez's voice came over the communication channel again. "Demonstration complete. Your fleet is disabled but intact. Your crews are unharmed. Consider this a lesson in the difference between our capabilities and yours." Stared at the human ship in shock. His entire battle group had been neutralized in less than 10 minutes. Not one had been killed, but every ship was powerless. "Impossible," he whispered. "Commander," Captain Martinez continued, "we're transmitting detailed scans of your fleet to all ships. Take a look." New data appeared on every screen. The humans had performed complete scans of every vessel in the fleet. They knew the exact specifications of each ship. They had access to command codes, crew records, even personal files. Most disturbing of all, the scans showed weaknesses in technology that the aliens themselves had never noticed. Critical flaws that could have been exploited to destroy the entire fleet in seconds. "We could have killed you all," Captain Martinez said quietly. "Instead, we chose to show mercy. Learn from this." The transmission ended, leaving the fleet floating helplessly in space. Emergency systems slowly began bringing disabled ships back online, but it would be hours before they were fully operational again. News of the encounter spread across the galaxy faster than light. The most feared military force in known space had been humbled by a single human ship. The implications were staggering. On Prime, the Galactic Council watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. Their most advanced sensors had barely been able to track the human destroyer. The technology gap was so vast, it seemed impossible. Doctor was frantically reviewing his historical data again. "They've had 800 years, he said to himself. 800 years of development while we thought they were dead." Speaker called for an emergency session. Representatives from across the galaxy demanded answers that nobody could provide. How had humanity advanced so far? Where had they been all these centuries? What else were they capable of? The military commander, General Reef, was studying the tactical data from the battle. Her aquatic species had always prided themselves on their defensive strategies, but what she saw made her question everything. "Their ship moved through dimensions we can't even detect," she said to her staff. "Our weapons couldn't touch them because they weren't really there half the time." Meanwhile, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Human ships were appearing at strategic locations throughout known space. They weren't attacking, just watching, waiting. The message was clear. Humanity could strike anywhere, anytime. They had the power to disable entire fleets without killing anyone. The question was what they wanted. Commander's defeat had shattered the myth of invincibility. If the galaxy's most aggressive military force could be stopped so easily, what hope did anyone else have? Fear began to spread through the galactic community. Not fear of destruction, but fear of the unknown. These humans were not the primitive species from the history books. They had become something far beyond current understanding. Admiral's final transmission of the day was brief and direct. "The demonstration is complete. We are not your enemies, but we will not be treated as your inferiors. The galaxy has new management. Adjust your expectations accordingly." As the three suns of Prime set once again, the galaxy faced a new reality. Humanity had returned, and they had brought technology that made everyone else look like children playing with toys. The age of human dominance was about to begin, whether the galaxy wanted it or not. In the depths of space, ancient monitoring stations recorded strange new signals. The energy patterns that Young had detected were getting stronger. Something vast was stirring in the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge. But for now, everyone's attention was focused on the immediate threat of human superiority. They had no idea that a much greater challenge was coming. The humans knew, though, they had always known. And they were ready for what came next. The emergency session of the Galactic Council lasted 3 days. Representatives argued, pleaded, and demanded answers that nobody could give. Finally, Admiral agreed to address them in person. She arrived alone in a small shuttle that somehow passed through all security systems without being detected. The human admiral walked into the great crystal hall wearing the same dark uniform from her transmissions. Her presence filled the enormous space. Every delegate watched her carefully. Up close, she looked tired but determined. Her gray hair was streaked with white, and deep lines marked her weathered face. This was someone who had seen things that aged her beyond her years. Speaker gestured to a platform in the center of the hall. "Admiral, we welcome you to our assembly. Perhaps you can help us understand what is happening." Admiral stepped onto the platform but remained standing. She looked around the hall at the hundreds of beings gathered there. Her expression was sad rather than threatening. "You want to know the truth," she said. Her voice carried clearly without amplification. "Very well, but understand that once you hear it, you cannot it. Your galaxy will never seem safe again." Doctor leaned forward in his seat. The historian had spent days reviewing human records, finding inconsistencies and hidden clues. He was ready to hear the real story. Admiral activated a small device, and holographic images appeared above the assembly. They showed star charts from 800 years ago when humans were supposedly destroying themselves. "The official story says we died in nuclear war," Admiral began. "That story was created by my ancestors to hide the truth. We didn't destroy ourselves, we fled." The hologram changed to show deep space monitoring stations around ancient Earth. The readings displayed massive energy signatures coming from the void between galaxies. In the year 2847, human scientists detected something approaching our galaxy. Signals from the darkness beyond the stars. Something vast and hungry was heading our way. Commander, his pride still wounded from the earlier defeat, spoke up. "You ran away from signals? Cowards." Admiral looked at him with something like pity. "We didn't run, Commander. We prepared. There's a difference." The hologram changed again, showing computer models and projections. The data was terrifying. Whatever was approaching had the power to consume entire star systems. "We called them the devourers," Admiral continued. "Ancient beings of pure energy that feed on the life force of planets. They move from galaxy to galaxy in cycles measured in millions of years." General Reef of the studied the projections with growing alarm. "How do you know this?" "Because we found the ruins they left behind in other galaxies," Admiral replied. "Dead worlds stripped of all life. Civilizations that thought themselves advanced and powerful reduced to cosmic dust." The holographic display showed images of devastated worlds. Planets cracked open like eggs, star systems dark and lifeless. The scale of destruction was beyond imagination. "Every calculation showed that this galaxy could not survive their arrival," Admiral said. "Your combined fleets, your technology, your unity, none of it would matter against what was coming." Speaker's crystal body dimmed with worry. "So you abandoned us." "We saved you," Admiral said firmly. "By leaving, our presence would have attracted them faster. They hunt civilizations that reach a certain level of development. We were almost at that threshold." The hologram changed to show human exodus fleets leaving the galaxy. Massive ships carrying millions of people into the unknown darkness of intergalactic space. "We sacrificed everything we knew," Admiral continued. Our colonies, our place in the galactic community. We became exiles so that the rest of you could live." Doctor was recording everything. The historian in him was fascinated by the revelation, but the part of him that was a living being felt growing terror. "Where did you go?" he asked. Admiral smiled for the first time since arriving. "Into the void between galaxies, into spaces so empty that light itself grows lonely. We found things there that changed us forever." The hologram showed strange structures floating in the darkness between stars. Ancient ruins built by civilizations that had faced the devourers before and lost. "We weren't the first to run," Admiral said. "Others had tried to escape in ages past. We found their ships, their records, their warnings, and we found their technology." The display showed human ships being rebuilt with alien designs, technology that bent space and time, weapons that could crack planets, defenses that could hide entire star systems. "We spent 8 centuries learning from the dead," Admiral said. "Every failed civilization taught us something new. Every ruin held secrets that made us stronger." Commander was studying the weapon displays. Even he could see that this technology was beyond anything currently known. You've been preparing for war. For the only war that matters, Admiral agreed. The war for the survival of all life in this galaxy. General Reef raised a tentacle. Why return now? Why not stay hidden until this threat arrives? Admiral's expression grew darker. Because they're almost here. Our deep space monitors detected them 3 months ago. They'll reach the galaxy's edge within 1 year. The hall erupted in panicked voices. Delegates shouted questions and demands. Some accused Admiral of lying, others begged for protection. Speaker called for order, but it took several minutes to restore calm. When the noise died down, Admiral was still standing calmly on the platform. "This is why we've returned," she said. "Not to conquer, but to defend. We are the guardians this galaxy needs, whether you want us or not." Doctor raised his hand for permission to speak. "Admiral, you've shown us the threat. What do you propose we do about it?" Admiral looked at the historian with respect. "The galaxy has 2 choices. Unite under human leadership and maybe survive, or remain divided and certainly die." "Leadership," Commander snarled. "You expect us to bow to you." "I expect you to accept reality," Admiral replied. "We have the technology, the experience, and the preparation. You have numbers and resources. Together we might stand a chance." The hologram changed to show defensive plans. Massive construction projects, weapon platforms, shield generators. The scope was staggering. "This is what we're asking you to build," Admiral said. "This is what survival looks like. Anything less means extinction for every living being in the galaxy." General Reef was studying the plans with professional interest. "These fortifications, they're designed to protect specific worlds." "The most defensible systems," Admiral confirmed. "We can't save everyone, but we can save enough to ensure the galaxy's species survive." The brutal honesty of that statement hit the assembly hard. Some worlds would be abandoned. Some civilizations would be sacrificed for the greater good. Speaker was struggling with the magnitude of what he was hearing. "How do we know you're telling the truth?" Admiral gestured, and the hologram changed to show real-time sensor data. Deep space monitors were detecting massive objects moving through the void beyond the galaxy's edge. "Because they're already here," she said quietly. The readings showed energy signatures unlike anything in the databases. Vast shapes moving through space at impossible speeds. The devourers had arrived at the galaxy's edge and were beginning their approach. "We estimate 6 months before they reach inhabited systems," Admiral said. 6 months to prepare 800 years' worth of defenses. It's not enough time, but it's what we have." The assembly fell silent as the reality of the situation sank in. The galaxy faced extinction, and the only hope for survival was trusting the humans who had abandoned them centuries ago. Commander broke the silence. "And if we refuse your leadership?" Admiral looked at him with tired eyes. "Then you die, all of you, and will withdraw to the deep void and wait for the next galaxy to evolve intelligent life." The choice was stark and simple. Submit to human authority or face cosmic extinction. As the session ended, delegates began the hardest decision in galactic history. The humans had returned not as conquerors, but as reluctant saviors. Whether the galaxy would accept salvation was still an open question. But the clock was ticking, and the devourers were coming. Time to choose between pride and survival was running out. The galaxy's response was swift but divided. Some species immediately pledged their support to the humans, recognizing the threat and accepting their need for protection. Others refused to believe the devourer story and demanded proof. Commander provided that proof in the worst possible way. 3 days after Admiral's revelation, the leader launched a full assault on the human fleet. He had convinced himself that the devourer threat was a lie designed to make the galaxy submit to human rule. His remaining forces, reinforced by ships from across the hegemony, numbered in the thousands. Every warship that could gather formed the largest military force in galactic history. The battle lasted exactly 47 minutes. The human response was surgical and devastating. They didn't just disable the fleet this time. They dismantled it completely, ship by ship, with a precision that spoke of perfect understanding of every weapon and defense system in the galaxy. Commander died when his flagship was vaporized. His final transmission was a single word: impossible. The destruction of the military sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The most aggressive and powerful species had been crushed like insects. If the humans could do that they could do it to anyone. Surrender offers poured in from across known space. Admiral accepted them all with the same tired expression she wore everywhere. She took no joy in the galaxy's submission. This was not conquest but necessity. The transformation began immediately. Human administrators arrived at every major world within days. They were polite but firm, taking control of industrial facilities, spaceports, and communication networks. The galaxy's resources were redirected toward a single purpose: preparing for war. Doctor found himself working directly with human historians and scientists. They shared knowledge freely, showing him records of their 800-year journey through the void. The scope of their preparation was overwhelming. "We've built 60 mobile fortress worlds," explained Dr. Sarah, a human. "Each one larger than your biggest space stations. They're equipped with weapons that can sterilize entire star systems." Studied the technical specifications with growing amazement. "How did you power these constructions? The energy requirements are massive." Doctor smiled sadly. "We learned to harvest energy directly from stars. Each fortress has its own captive sun, kept in a containment field and drained over centuries." The implications were staggering. Humanity had become gods of stellar engineering while the galaxy debated trade disputes. General Reef worked with human military planners to coordinate defenses. She was impressed despite herself at their thoroughness. "Your evacuation plans," she said to Admiral during one planning session. "You've already decided which worlds to abandon." "Yes," Admiral replied without emotion. 17,000 inhabited worlds will be sacrificed. We can only defend about 3,000 systems effectively." The casual mention of such massive loss of life shocked Reef. "How can you speak of abandoning billions of people?" Admiral looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. "Because saving 3,000 worlds is better than losing them all. The devourers don't take prisoners, General. They consume everything." As if summoned by her words, the long-range sensors finally detected them clearly. The devourer fleet emerged from the galactic void like a plague of cosmic locusts. Each entity was the size of a moon, composed of pure energy held together by incomprehensible forces. They moved in perfect formation, consuming everything in their path. The first worlds to fall were the empty systems at the galaxy's edge, planets that had been stripped for resources or abandoned as worthless. The monitoring stations recorded everything before they too were devoured. The devourers didn't destroy matter. They transformed it, breaking down the very bonds that held atoms together and feeding on the energy released. What they left behind wasn't even debris. It was simply nothing. Speaker watched the recordings with his fellow council members. The crystal being's normally bright form had dimmed to almost gray. "They're worse than the humans described," he whispered. Admiral stood beside him in the observation deck. "We understated the threat. We thought it would be easier for you to accept a smaller horror than the full truth." The devourer advance was methodical and unstoppable. They consumed 3 star systems in the first week. Their appetite seemed infinite, their numbers countless. But humanity was ready. The first battle occurred at the outer rim world of Prime. A small devourer scout force encountered a human fortress world that had been positioned in their path. The engagement lasted 12 hours and ended in complete victory for humanity. The devourers were not invincible after all. They could be fought, and they could be destroyed. The weapons humanity had developed during their exile proved effective. Energy disruptors that could break apart the devourers' coherent forms. Dimensional cannons that folded space around targets, trapping them in pocket universes. Stellar bombs that could trigger controlled supernovas. More importantly, humanity had learned the devourers' weaknesses from studying the ruins of previous civilizations. They were vulnerable during feeding, when their energy forms became more solid. They could be confused by certain electromagnetic frequencies. They had blind spots in their perception. 8 centuries of preparation had given humanity every advantage possible. The counteroffensive began within a month of the first devourer appearance. Human fortress worlds moved through space like mobile planets, each one a self-contained military base equipped with the most advanced technology ever created. The galaxy's species watched in amazement as humanity waged war on a cosmic scale. Entire star systems became battlefields. Suns were weaponized. Space itself was twisted into defensive barriers. Young, now promoted to Chief Communications Monitor after her early detection of the anomalies, coordinated information flow across the war zone. She watched battles that involved energies measured in stellar outputs. "How long can this continue?" she asked Chief Monitor Paul during one particularly intense engagement. The old studied the tactical displays. "As long as it needs to. The humans have been preparing for this war longer than our entire recorded history. They know things about warfare that we never imagined." The war raged for months. The devourers proved to be a relentless enemy, but humanity had become something beyond their original nature. They fought with precision born of centuries of planning and technology that bordered on the supernatural. Gradually, the tide turned. The devourer advance slowed, then stopped. For the first time in cosmic history, they met resistance they couldn't overcome. Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as the last major devourer formation was destroyed by concentrated fire from a dozen human fortress worlds. The ancient enemy that had terrorized galaxies for eons was finally facing extinction itself. "Status report," she ordered. "All primary targets eliminated," reported her tactical officer. "Scattered remnants detected in 7 outer systems, but they're retreating toward the void." Admiral nodded. The immediate threat was over, but vigilance would be eternal. The devourers might return, or other cosmic horrors might emerge from the darkness between galaxies. "Send a message to all human commands," she said. "Begin Phase 2 operations. It's time to rebuild." The galaxy that emerged from the Devourer War was transformed. Humanity held ultimate authority, but they used it wisely. The other species were treated as partners rather than subjects, though everyone understood who held the real power. Doctor published his historical analysis of the human exodus and return. His work became the foundation for understanding what the galaxy had endured and why humanity's actions had been necessary. "They saved us all," he wrote in his conclusion. "Not from conquest or oppression, but from complete extinction. The humans gave up everything they valued to become the guardians we needed. We owe them a debt that can never be repaid." Speaker agreed with that assessment. The leader had initially resented human dominance, but the war had shown him the truth. Without human protection, every world in the galaxy would have been consumed. General Reef established the new Galactic Defense Force, integrating the best technology and tactics from all species under human command. The old rivalries and conflicts seemed petty compared to the cosmic threats that lurked in the void. Commander was dead, but his second-in-command had survived the destruction of the fleet. The young warrior now served in the Integrated Defense Forces, learning human military doctrine. "They fight like no one else," he reported to the remaining leadership. "Not for glory or conquest, but for survival. They understand warfare in ways we never did." As the first year of the new galactic order ended, Admiral finally allowed herself to rest. She stood in her quarters aboard the flagship, looking out at the stars through a viewport. The galaxy was safe for now. The immediate threat had been defeated, but she knew this was not the end of humanity's watch. Other dangers would come from the deep dark, and humans would be ready to face them. Her aide, Captain Martinez from the destroyer Indomitable, entered with the daily reports. "The reconstruction is ahead of schedule," he said. "The other species are adapting well to the new defensive protocols." Admiral smiled, the first genuine smile she had shown since returning to the galaxy. "Good," she said. "Our ancestors made a promise 800 years ago. They swore that humanity would stand guard against the dark. Today we kept that promise." Outside the viewport, the stars shone peacefully. But in the depths of space, human monitoring stations continued their eternal watch, ready for whatever might come next from the void between galaxies. The Guardians had returned, and they would never abandon their post again. The galaxy was finally safe.